Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Quitcast. Today, we're going to do a primer, and I know we're in another series, but we're going to do a quick primer because we've been getting a lot of questions about the positive and negative emotion cycles, and Nikki suggested that I make a primer video on it, so I thought, let's do that. So very quickly, I'm going to run you through this tool that I learned in therapy a long time ago, and it's called the positive and negative emotion cycle, and really, the whole title is just the cycle, but I split it up into positive and negative cycles because after I had been doing it for so long, I felt like I could do the negative emotion cycle easier than I can do the positive one. And so I need, or actually more in the moment, I can do it more in the moment now. But the positive one, I have to remember sometimes to do, I have to kind of be cued into it. So I want to cover all four negative and all four positive, but then I'm going to specifically do a positive emotion cycle with you so you can see what it looks like. So the purpose of this, and this is kind of the concept that I learned in therapy about the different states that you can be in, right? Like, are you in I think they call it a joy state. That's a 1, 2, 3 is like the line, which is I'm okay, I'm not great, but I'm not bad, right? I'm okay. And then 4 and 5 are below the line. So when you get down to 5, you're like spitting out, right? Emotionally. And then we're in either fight or flight response, fear response, or something similar where we have to kind of wait for that to pass and then come back up out of it. So the goal of doing something like a positive emotion cycle is to be able to stay above the line as much as possible and to be reminding ourselves of when we actually feel emotions. There is a huge difference between me repeating things that I think I'm supposed to believe and doing a positive emotion cycle. So for instance, I might think that I'm supposed to be grateful for failure, but if I don't actually feel gratitude for the opportunity to fail, it's not worth me saying that in a positive emotion cycle because I don't actually feel that emotion. And in fact, it might be more worth me doing a negative emotion cycle, except that if you have a failure trigger, you're likely to go below the line when you start talking about the negative emotions if you're too quick trigger. So anyway, the time to do these is not when I'm struggling. The time to do a positive emotion cycle is consistently over time to help myself stay above the line. So the purpose of the positive emotion cycle, again, this is not an emergency action plan tool. This is a maintenance tool. And what it does is it helps us keep in touch with our positive emotions that we are feeling. Again, that's the most important part. It has to be the ones that you're actually feeling. So I want to do the positive emotion cycle with you and talk about why the different pieces are so important. Because the first piece that's important is you have to actually be feeling the emotions. That's really important. You can't just say things out loud you think you're supposed to feel because it won't serve the purpose of the cycle, which the purpose of the cycle, again, is to feel the feelings that are positive that you have. When I first introduced this to the community, I was sort of joking about how I would always have something that was really pretty around, like flowers, or like I love these pair I wear clip-on glasses. And I specifically like them because when I look at them, it makes me happy, right? Like to look at something that's cute like this, it makes me happy. And so it's easy for me to get quickly into my happiness feelings if I'm wearing something or seeing something that makes me happy. So the positive emotion cycle, the goal is I want to feel each one of the positive emotions that I actually feel in the moment on cue verbally, right? Like, so I either want you to write down or say out loud the positive emotions. And so we're going to start with happy because happiness is the cue. It's the entry into the positive emotion cycle. And so having something around you that makes you happy makes it easy to enter the cycle. So this is important. We don't do any thoughts in the positive emotion cycle. We're not saying, I feel happy that I have glasses on because I really like looking good or whatever, right? Like the because stuff, we don't want that in the cycle. We don't want to enter into thinking. We want to try to stay in just the feelings. So I might say, I feel happy that I'm wearing purple and pink glasses. I feel happy that it's almost the weekend. I feel happy. And then if you start to feel other positive emotions, which the positive emotions in order are happy, grateful, hopeful, and secure. So I feel happy that, I feel grateful that, I feel hopeful that, and I feel secure that. And we've nuanced these a little bit when we talk about it on the Patreon. Not everybody will use these exact specific words, but it's the basic feeling of happiness. And when we get to secure, I'll explain why that is. But when you start feeling the next feeling, you want to kind of follow that just to try to get all the way through the cycle. And so when I was saying happy about the weekend, I was feeling a lot of gratitude, and I was feeling gratitude for myself setting boundaries so that I have a weekend, which is a long ago thing for me. And if I was doing a real cycle, I wouldn't explain that, but you don't know the context. So anyway, but I feel very grateful to my past self for setting boundaries so that I actually have a weekend. And I feel hopeful that I will feel rested at the end of the weekend. And I feel secure that everything's going to be okay. And the goal of those emotions is that they should sort of lead one into the other. And I always like to tell people, I spent 2 years doing this consistently, like every day or almost every single day, multiple times a day. So it's easy for me to feel the emotions in a way that I used to not be able to. So if you can't feel all four in a row, feel what you can feel. Notice what you can notice. If you feel grateful first, then notice that you feel grateful. And I always want to try to feel at least one more if I can, because we've talked about this also on the Patreon, where we'll have people who, for instance, have very high empathy, who, as soon as they feel the beginning of the negative emotion cycle, they'll automatically feel the end because they're just so fast at getting through all of the emotions in between. And they don't have to name all of them because they just automatically sort of go one to the next. And they'll start off with, I feel sad that. And the negative emotion cycle is sad, angry, fearful, guilty. So I feel sad that, I feel angry that, I feel afraid that, and I feel guilty that. And so they will go from, I'm sad about this, all the way to, well, there's nothing I can do about this. So, and then they just release it because they know there's nothing that can be done. And they get through all of the sad that they feel in the moment. And it leads them all the way through to the guilt, which is the goal of feeling the negative emotion cycle. It's to clear those emotions away. And one of the downsides, those of us who are not regularly, that don't have a lot of facility yet with our emotions, is we get caught up in things that are in one of the negative emotions. Like we get caught up in sadness or anger or fear, and we're not making it all the way to, is there anything I can do to change this situation? Is there anything I can do about this feeling? And if not, can I let it go? Like, can I release? Because there's nothing I can do. So if there isn't anything I can do, me continuing to cycle back and forth between all those emotions or getting stuck in one of them is only going to make me go below the line consistently. And for those of you who are high restorative, like a lot of people would assume that restorative people get mad more often. But what typically happens is restoratives go very quickly to, well, I can't do anything about that. And again, there are so many people who have this intact emotional skill chain where it's easier for them to get from, I feel angry or sad or afraid about something, to what can I do about it? Can I take action? And that's the goal of the negative emotion cycle. But you'll see people, even in the empathies in the positive emotion cycle, where they'll say, I feel happy that, and automatically I'm like, ah, that felt good, right? Like, and that's the secure, that ha is the secure feeling that you get at the end of the positive emotion cycle. And just so you all know that I'm not a clinical practitioner, my goal is not to teach anyone how to do this in therapy. My goal is, because it's helped me so much, I want to talk about how to do it. If you would like to find someone to do this, the type of therapy that I was doing was called emotional brain training, which is EBT. And the originator of EBT program is Laurel Mellin, Mellin. And I will link to the show notes. Fantastic program. It absolutely saved my emotional life. And I'm so glad that I did it. But I wanted to talk about this because so many of us struggle with staying inside of the negative emotion cycle and not being able to get over to that place. And I just want to give us the option of trying something because, again, for me, skill acquisition is so important because so many of us are missing skills that are keeping us emotionally regulated through no fault of our own, through no fault of anyone. Just we didn't get taught that because no one else got taught that. But I'm here to say you could teach yourself how to do these things and how to regulate and practice the skills on your own. And I highly recommend it. Once again, I have to remind everyone, this is not for below the line. Like, this is not a below the line emotional tool. I don't want you trying to do this when you need to do other things to cope with being below the line, right? But I do want you to do some clearing of emotions so that we can stop getting stuck in those places. Because when we get to either guilty, what can I do about it? Or secure, I feel good, like I feel secure, like a secure adult, then I'm able to kind of close that loop on those emotions. And that's the goal. So try that today. Try it. Watch this video again. It's short, or listen to this audio again. It's short. Write those down. And when I did this practice in my 20s, so you all know how old I am now, but when I did this practice in my 20s, I was doing it every hour on the hour for days and days and days and months and months and months, because I knew I needed the practice to be able to gain the emotional facility, and I just did not have it. So I hope that you will consider doing this. I think this is one of the most important tools. We talked about it in last year's conference. We're going to talk about it probably on the Patreon again, and it's come up in the Facebook group. So I hope that you have been helped by this and that this is yet another tool in your author for life sustainable career, because all of us need to know how to be emotionally viable. And so many of us, we're like, I only want the tips and tricks. I only want the marketing advice. I only want, etc. And I'm like, that's not a sustainable way to live. We have got to have human skills also. And so I hope that you will enjoy this. And if you do end up practicing it, please let me know. I always like to hear that people have been doing this work. And otherwise, I will see you all on the next video on the Quitcast. Bye, everybody.